This is Beowulf. It's a new translation by Maria Headley. Bro, tell me we still know how to speak of kings. In the old days, everyone knew what men were brave, bold, glory bound. Only stories now, but I'll sound the Speardane's song, hoarded for hungry times. Their first father was a foundling, sailed seafaring. He spent his youth fists up, browbeating every barstool brother, bonfiring his enemies. That man began in the waves, a baby in a basket, but he bootstrapped his way into a kingdom, trading loneliness for luxury. Whether they thought kneeling necessary or no, everyone from head to tail of the whale road bent down. There's a king, there's his crown. That was a good king. Later, God sent Sealed a son, a wolf cub, further proof of manhood. Being God, he knew how the Spear Danes had suffered, the misery they'd mangled through leaderless, long years of loss. So the Life Lord, that almighty big boss, birthed them an Earthshaker. Bill's name kissed legions of lips by the time he was half grown, but his own father was still breathing. We all know a boy can't daddy until his daddy's dead. A smart son gives gifts to his father's friends in peacetime. When war woos him as war will, he'll need those troops to follow the leader. Privilege is the way men prime power the world over. Sealed was iron until the end. When he died, his warriors executed his final orders. They swaddled their king of rings and did just as the Dane had demanded, back when mind and meter could merge in his mouth. They bore him to the harbor and into the bosom of a ship, that father they'd followed, that man they'd adored. She was anchored and eager to embark, an ice maiden built to bear the weight of a prince. They laid, and by the mast, packed tight in his treasure trove, bright swords, war weeds, his lap holding a hoard of flood tides, each fair coin placed by a loyal man. He who pays the piper calls the tune. His shroud shone, ringed in runes, sun-stitched. I've never heard of any ship so heavy, nor corpse so rich. Skills came into the world unfavored. His men weighted him as well as the strangers had, who'd once warped him to the waves' weft. Even ghosts must be fitted to fight. The war band flew a golden flag over their main man. The salt sea saluted him, so too the storms, and skilled soldiers got drunk instead of crying. They mourned the way men do. No man knows, not me, not you, who haul skill's hordes ashore, but the poor are plentiful, and somebody got lucky. Finally, Bill rolled into righteous rule, daddying for decades after his own daddy died. At last, though, it was his turn for erasure. His son, the half-Dane, ran roughshod, smothering his father's story with his own. He rose in the realm and became a famous warlord, fighting ferociously dawn to dusk, fathering his own horde of 4, heirs matching into the world in this order: Hrothgar, Hrothgar, Halga, and I heard he hand-clasped his daughter, her name's a blur, to Anella. Tender, she rendered that battle sweet, happy and ging, where before he'd only been happy and fighting. War was the wife Hrothgar wed first. Battles won, treasures taken, admirers and kin heard of his fight fortune and flanked him in force. Strong boys grow into stronger men, and when Hrothgar had an army, his hopes turned to a hall to home them, a house to espouse his faithful. More than just a mead hall, a world's wonder, 8th of 7. When it was done, he swore he'd load, lighten, unhand everything he'd won, worn, and owned, pass to his posse all God's gifts, save lives and land. He'd keep the kingdom, of course. He gave far-reaching orders: carpets, carpentry, walls and gables, tables for seating a clan, rare gifts plated like rare meat, all for his men. So it rose. A greater hall than any other, Hrothgar filled it blood brother by blood brother and named it Heorot. His words were heard and heralded. And yes, yes, bro, this man was more than just talk. He gave good gifts. His war-wedded war kings rings and drank their leaders' mead. Nightly he feted his fight family with fortunes. The hall loomed. Golden Tower's antler tipped. It was asking for burning, but that hadn't happened yet. You know how it is. Every castle wants invading, and every family has enemies born within it. Old grudges recrudesce. Speaking of grudges, out there in the dark one waited. He listened, holding himself hard to home, but he'd been lonely too long, brotherless, sludge-stranded. Now he heard and endured the din of drinkers. Their poetry poisoned his peace. Every night, turmoil, raucous laughter from Heorot, howling of harps, squawking of soaps, men recounting the history of men like them. The Almighty made earth for us, they sang, sun and moon for our delight, fens full of creatures for our feasting, meres to quench our thirst. Heorot's hall dwellers caroused by candlelight, stumbling to sleep with the sunrise replete, lambs bleeding comfort, ease pleased until the night wakefulness moved their watcher to wrath. Grendel was the name of this woe-walker, unlucky by fate. He'd been living rough for years, ruling the wild, the mere, the fen, and the fastness, his kingdom. His creation was cursed under the line of Cain, the kin-killer. The Lord long ago had taken Abel's side, though none of that was Grendel's doing. He descended from bloodstains. From Cain had come a cruel kind, seen by some as shadow-stalked. Monsters, elves, giants who'd ground against God, and for that been banished. Under a new moon, Grendel set out to see what horde haunted this hall. He found the ring-danes drunk, doused down, making beds of benches. They were mead-medicated, untroubled by pain, their sleep untainted by sorrow. Grendel hurt, and so he hunted. The stranger taught the Danes about time. He struck, seized 30 dreaming men, and hied himself home, bludgeoning his burden as he bounded, for the Danes had slept sweetly in a world that had woken him, benefited from bounty, even as they'd broken him. When Golden Teeth tasted the sky, Grendel's silent skill was seen. His kills, grim crimson spilt on banquet boards. The war horde wailed at the spoiling of their sleep, at the depths they've dived in darkness, while the enemy ate. A mournful morning, their leader sat at his plate, old overnight, impotent at this ingress. The band tracked the invader, but not to his lair. They had prayers to call out and pains to bear. Grendel did not stay himself from slaughter. The next night, a second slaying, and then another. His rope played out and rotted through a cursed course, plotted without mercy, and course after course cold in his keep. It was easy after that to count the weepers, men fleeing to cotes beneath the king's wings. You'd have to have been a fool to miss the malice of the hell-dweller, now hall-dwelling. Those who lived, left, or locked themselves in ladies' lodgings far from fault lines. Those who stayed, slain. For 12 snow seasons, Grendel reigned over evening. Hrothgar suffered, Heorot buffeted, no hero to hold it. Every outsider talked telling of legends and losses. Hrothgar's hall became a morgue, dark marks on floorboards. No songs, no chopes, no searing meat, no blazing fire. And Grendel, incomplete, raided relentlessly. This is what they would call a blood feud, a war that tore a hole through the hearts of the Danes. Grendel was broken and would not brook peace, desist in dealing deaths or die himself. He had no use for stealth. He came near nightly and never negotiated. The old counselors knew better than to expect a settlement in silver from him. Ringless, Grendel's fingers, kingless, his country. Be it wizened vizier or beardless boy, he hunted them across foggy moors, an owl misdiving for mice, grist grinding their tails in his teeth. A Hellion's home is anywhere good men fear to tread. Who knows the dread this marauder mapped? Grendel, enemy to everyone, waged his war without an army, lonesome as he lapped the luxurious links of Heorot. He haunted the hall at night, the gold gifter's throne throwing shade at him, his soul burning with dark flame. He couldn't touch the treasure or tame his yearning, for he'd been spurned by God. Times were hard for the prince of the Sealdings, too, heart shattered, battered spirit spent. Men came to advise, bringing pithy plots and plans to arrest Hrothgar's awful guest. They bent themselves to idols and offered up their own spells, that a soul slayer might suddenly show up and save them. That was their nature, these heathens, hoping at the wrong heavens, remembering hell but nothing else. They knew no true Lord, no God, no Master. They too were cursed, yet thought themselves clear. Broad, let me say how they were, in times of worst woe, throwing themselves on luck rather than on faith. Fire walkers swearing their feet uncharred while smoke stepping. Why not face the boss and at death seek salves, not scars? So it went for years, the hell-sent raider harrowing the half-Dane's son, who sat in silence, brooding over unhatched hopes, while in the dark his people shuddered, salt-scourged by weeping, by nights spent waking instead of sleeping. News went global. In Geatland, Higelac's right-hand man heard about Grendel. Bruh, here was a warrior like no other, massive, mighty, born of noble blood. He called for a ship to be readied for his band and boasted he'd try his teeth on this tale, sail in as a savior over the Swan Road and seek that king and lend a hand as defender. His elders understood his quest, and though he was dear to them, they knew better than to spear him with speeches. They augured the omens, and ushered him onward. He found 14 fists for hire, the boldest men of the Geats, and enlisted them as fighters. He, as their captain, went aboard to pilot the vessel with sea skill through keen currents and mean depths. Soon it was time to depart. The boat's belly was wet, and beneath the land locks these warriors met, cheering, bringing battle gear into her bosom. As sands spit and surf sang, they pushed off and sent themselves to sea, made men. The wind sent them surging with a foam-feathered throat. Their bird flew free, sailing with certainty over salt waters. On the second day she sought ashore, and the men saw cliffs, crags uplifting from the ocean, the end of the voyage. Overboard the Geats leapt, shifting from sailors to soldiers. The moment their souls touched solid earth, their weapons rattled as they moored the boat, their mail unveiled in sunlight. They thanked God for easy passage and sweet seas. Far above them the Sealdings' watchman waited. It was his duty to keep these cliffs unclimbed. When his gaze hit gleam, swords and shields glittering across the gangplank, passing without permission, Hrothgar's man set out for the sand on horseback, straight spear in hand, to stand formally and question them. How dare you come to Denmark costumed for war? Chainmail and swords? There's a dress code. You're denied. I'm the Dane's doorman. This is my lord's door. Who are you that dare steer your ship for our shore? I'm the watcher of these waters, have been for years, and it's my duty to scan the sea for shield-bearing dangers to Danes. I've never seen any force come so confidently over swells, certain of welcome, no welcome won. Did you send word? No. Were you invited? No. You're not on the guest list. And also, who's the giant? What weapons does he hold? Oh, hell no. He's no small-time hall soldier, but noble. Look at his armor. I'm done here. Spies, state your secrets or be denounced. Who are you? What's your business? Where'd you come from? I'll ask one more time. You're not coming past this cliff. Answer now or bounce. You, men, who, where, why? Their leader unlocked his word hoard. He was a senior soldier, so he spat certainty. We are Geats, born and bred, bound to Higelac. My father was Egthio. No doubt you've heard of him. He was famous. He lived through winters that would have pressed the life from a lesser, and though he's long since left us, everyone the world over knows my daddy's name. We come in peace, looking for your lord and land shield, the son of the half-Dane. Kindly give us directions and we'll get gone. We're here to offer ourselves up to the Dane's lord, and our plans are open, no secrets from you. Is it true that something savage walks at night? We've heard the stories. That misery stalks and rages here, that good men are endangered here by a stranger in this country. We come to counsel your king on how to cleave his reaver and court calm. If there's respite to be had, I'm the lad to bring it. Otherwise, Hrothgar will be grieving and desperate as long as his hall hangs. I see it there at the horizon. The watchman was unmoved, his authority innate. He sat tall on horseback. I know the difference between words and deeds as anyone with half a brain does. Thus far, I'll endorse your scheme. You seem a troop true to my lord. The rest is in the proving. Come then, bring your battle gear. I'll lead you to my leader and send my guards to circle your new tarred ship on the sandbar until it's time for her to rise ring proud over this rolling road and be boarded again by whichever of you, if any, survive the sword storm you've sought.